full-blown trade war now raging. What should you do? Where should you put your money? We'll take that question to the experts. But before that, we have a more basic one to answer. Will the tariff shock rock India's GDP growth? I think that's a vital concern. With many predicting a recession in the US, very few analysts would bet against it. Goldman Sachs is saying the probability of US recession is up from 35% to 45%. JP Morgan, odds of recession is 60%. S&P Global said odds of recession between 30 to 35%. So a variation in these numbers. But viewers, everyone seems to be indicating that America is going to hit a recession, which is basically showing losses in two back-to-back quarters. But unlike China, that has threatened to respond to Trump, India's relative insulation from direct tariff tit-for-tat confrontations affords it a degree of strategic advantage. Domestic consumption accounts for nearly 60% of GDP, cushioning the economy from external shocks. But threats to consumption can come in the shape of inflation if India fails to clinch a trade deal with Trump or diversify imports and even find new markets for its exports. There's also India's emphasis on self-reliance or Atmanirbharta, which seeks to boost domestic manufacturing and reduce import dependence. But Trump, who is mercurial, can't be second-guessed, and that kind of uncertainty clouds the investment climate. Wait and watch is perhaps what many experts will advise, but that's hardly reassuring for retail investors who've got life savings on the line. But after examining the facts, it appears India doesn't need to fear. For one, the tariffs on India aren't nearly as punishing as they are on China and some of the other competing economies. This gives us an advantage. The only question is, are we in a position to exploit this advantage? Some people say we are. A majority, in fact, are saying we are. But I wouldn't put an affirmative on that so soon. Let's wait and watch. Second, we're negotiating a trade deal, and that's going to change things significantly. Third, the only other economy that has the capacity to take in business as it flees from China is India. But let me not stand in the way, and let's go straight across to the experts. Let's break this down. Let's get a sense of where we are headed, economically, macro picture, and of course, as investors, retail investors, what should we do? Monica Hallan, author and financial educator, are with us. Dr. Ranganathan will give us the public perspective. Rajiv Mantri, founder and managing director of Navam Capital, will be here with us. Ajay Sai, DG and CEO of the Federation of Indian Export Organization, Aminullah Khan, economist, is also here with us. We're just awaiting two other guest viewers, and there, one of them is there, Rajiv Mantri. Rajiv, hi. It's not exactly a bright day. Hopefully tomorrow morning will bring more cheer. But how do you see things for India? GDP on the line, you would think? We got a problem here?
So, good evening, Rahul. The kind of moves and counter moves and statements and counter statements, and frankly, even rumors that are swirling around, it is very difficult to say anything. Having said that, obviously, with so many variables up in the air, one can only come back to the basics, which is India should continue certain internal reforms, internal changes, go for bilateral trade agreements wherever possible in this environment. That's the best we can hope for.
But Mr. Mantri, you also are somebody who puts money into the economy. You back, you're an angel investor. Some say you've got your own portfolio going, this, that, the other. So obviously, you're the type of person who might decide, let me sit it out for now. Let me wait. And that'll have a ripple effect if hundreds and thousands of you out there do the same. We've got a bit of a problem.
No, certainly at an ecosystem level, I can tell you what happens when there is a certain high uncertainty period going on for fundamental areas of the economy, such as trade. Then you have stock markets reacting in a certain manner. Everything gets a chill. I would say even why financial investors like us, particularly in the real economy, if you're running a business today, you will say let me take a pause on any kind of capital expenditure, any kind of serious business investment, and see how things fall out, right? And people just pull back a bit, sit on cash, and in a way that causes a self-fulfilling prophecy of like a, you can call it a downward spiral, you can call it a stasis, you can choose your language that you like. But for sure, it causes a difficult situation in the short run for the economy. There's no two ways about it.
Okay, difficult situation. Not the brightest, rosiest picture being painted there. Monica Hallan, where do you come in on this? Is India's GDP going to be, will it take a hit, or are we relatively okay? We just have to wait it out, do the right things.
So what is happening is that America is playing Russian roulette with China. Essentially, that's what's happening. And the whole world is watching this and is affected. As far as India is concerned, look, I think everyone's been over this idea that we are actually in a better place than a lot of other countries. We've got our fiscal deficit under control. There is a lot of domestic consumption. The tariff rates aren't as bad. So this is a fight between China and the US. I don't know if you know, but Trump has just threatened 50% tariff on China, and the Dow has, the S&P has really crashed right now.
Yeah.
So there is this, so there is this big war between the two competing powers of the world, and we'll all suffer. It is, it's difficult not to suffer at a country and individual level when what we have is a textbook case of something called systematic risk. Systematic risk is something that you cannot diversify against. You cannot, all the asset classes will fall when things like a geopolitical risk come to bear. So the only thing I can say for India is that we've got a macro picture in place. Luckily, the things which matter are in place. We just have to ride this out. And the one thing that I want to tell retail investors is that this is not the time to panic. If you have followed the rules of equity investing, you should be okay. This is neither the time to buy nor to sell. You have to put your head down and ride this time out. That's my short point, that watching the market every day is going to harm you for pure retail investors. You just have to stay out for a while.
And those who are in, what do they do?
Just stay. Look, I will very briefly give you rules of the game for equity for retail investors, okay? Not speculators, retail investors. You have to have an asset allocation between safe products like debt, which is fixed deposits and low risk debt funds, and some in equity. The equity part of your allocation, you do not have to touch for 7 to 10 years, which means you have the liquid money in fixed deposits and bond funds, which you might need for current use, right? So whatever that mix is, that's your first cut. If you've got this basic asset allocation in place, look, people who have this in place are not phased. They're completely okay. It's people who are playing the market. As a retail investors, you do not play the market. You do not time the market. So if you're in and you have your asset allocation in place, you are not worried at all. So you just have to stay the course. Just wait, because markets will do this. And again, we go on telling, markets go up and down. If you don't have the stomach, don't come to the market. If you cannot take a downturn like this, if it's upsetting you, if it's causing you not to sleep, please don't invest in equity. Stay in fixed deposits, stay with safer parts of the market. Today is the test for an equity investor. If it's worrying you, either you've not learned the rules of the game or you're not cut out to be an equity investor. The real equity investors are not phased at all. They're not watching the market. The real equity retail investors are not watching this market.
Okay, so stay where you are, stay safe. That's basically what Monica Hallan is saying. Amirullah Khan, let's just talk about the big picture. We'll come down to the retail investor and what should one do now and what asset class can we hope to invest in and this, that, the other in just a few moments, or even if we need to actually be doing something like that. But Amirullah Khan, look, many people are saying the US is heading to a recession. We put some numbers out, S&P, etc. Now that's going to have a ripple effect. I know that this perhaps is a war between America and China and this, that, the other, but two elephants or two dragons, or call them what you want to, well, when they sort of run amok, then the grass under them is flattened. So unfortunately, if it's a stampede between these two huge creatures, it's going to flatten out a lot of other people. Now, what is our threshold? Do we have the resilience as an economy?
Yeah, Rahul, the first question that will this impact India's GDP? You see, it is very unlikely to, because as far as our gross domestic production is concerned, that is insulated in a lot of ways. Because domestic production will continue to go up given the fact that per capita incomes are going up, and most of the production that we are seeing in manufacturing or agriculture is pretty stable. So, as far as GDP is concerned, I don't see, or we don't see any major issue there. What is going to be problematic, of course, is our exports. And you see, even on exports, I mean, the good news is the bad news that our exports are dull in any case. The exports have been stable and stagnant for a while, despite weak rupee. And therefore, even if those exports go down a bit, it shouldn't really matter. They're already at pretty much rock bottom. The issue is investment. We have been seeing a slowdown in foreign investment in any case because of the troubles that are happening across Europe and the US, because of some problems that we have within India. So investment has been down. Domestic investment has been down. It is only public investment that has kept India afloat, and that will continue to go ahead. And that's the one reason why you will see this strange decision today of increasing petrol prices while crude oil prices are going down, because the government needs that much amount of leeway
Not
to have
petrol
somebody
prices for the consumer. Just making that clear. It's for the
excise, it's the excise duty, just so that revenues go up. The government has some space and some money to invest and to fill the gap, where the private investor or the foreign investor is going to be slow or not invest. The big problem continues to be the stock market. It's not every day that you have an incessant fall. And remember that the stock market's been falling for about 4 months now, much before Trump. So there is a certain anguish and anxiety within the investor, both the retail and the corporate. And that's something that will begin to start worrying a lot of people. Monica is right that it is not something that should elicit knee-jerk reactions and have people falling, but it is going to hurt because it's been a while. And now, with tariffs and with no end in sight, because for somebody like Trump, it is very difficult to predict whether he's going to. There is this rumor about a 90-day holiday and so on.
But that was a rumor, fake news.
Whether those things are going to go around everywhere because people want some straws to clutch on. So it is certainly a serious issue. We are at a very difficult period of time because, as Mr. Mantri said, it's so difficult to predict now. We just have to sit down.
I didn't understand one contradiction here. You said investments are a problem, both foreign, domestic, etc., private investments. But if there's a recession in America, where will that capital that sits in America go? Wouldn't it come to India or an economy like India?
Yeah, we've been waiting for that investment to come to India. We thought after COVID that China's loss will be India's gain, and it really did not help us. It seems to be going to countries like Vietnam. And that's why, again, what Mr. Mantri said is important, that we continue our reform. We continue to ensure that we become a country that is palatable and that attracts foreign investment. We've not been able to do that yet, and that's the reason why foreign investment.
And actually, I would like to make one point there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to say something on that, Rahul. I believe, first, we should also do what we can to mobilize investment domestically. Today, our corporates are sitting on very, very substantive balance sheets. Corporate India has gone through a major deleveraging cycle. If you look at the balance sheets of all the top 100, top 150 corporates, they're all cash rich. And private investment has not been picking up in the country. The question is why? One of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the obvious reasons is that there's been enough capacity, hence there's been no investment. But I would also argue that the regulatory climate in the country has also been difficult. So deregulations are required. So more liberalization is necessary. for businesses to come in.
So this is,
And
you're
to say
saying,
that,
the
you know, we
perfect
are-
opportunity, really, Monica Hallan, perfect opportunity to get in there, take some of those big reformist decisions, kickstart the economy, get people to invest, sitting on cash.
So there are two parts to it, right? There's something that the government can do, and then there's something that investors can do. So again, for retail investors, my suggestion always is that if you have a plan, just follow the plan. Markets going up and down should not make you change that plan. For governments, I think the big problem is regulatory cholesterol, as Rajiv said. I think that ease of doing business has not happened on the ground. And unfortunately, you have ministers who go and talk about what sort of business, what sort of startups China does and what India does. I mean, you know what? Despite all the roadblocks, despite all the haftas and the bribes that businessmen have to pay, somebody is doing something. This is not what you need to hear from this government, that you should be doing more value-added stuff. So I think there has to be a change in the way the government looks at business, the bureaucracy looks at business, and the way the rent seeking happens out of businesses, small and large. I think that's where really the reform has to happen. That you are not there to extract that constant rent from people who are trying to do something in the country.
Given the
Absolutely.
fact that as things stand, we have this cholesterol, regulatory cholesterol, that makes it difficult for us to therefore even take in investment if it's coming from other quarters.
Precisely.
So,
Precisely. I mean,
yeah.
frankly, Rahul, the reason Vietnam has been preferred, and in many ways, India has made good steps in areas like electronics manufacturing, but we have to benchmark ourselves in a larger context. If you look at how Vietnam has done even better than us, one of the reasons again is there is a faster kind of growth opportunity there because of easier regulations, probably. And we are lagging in that now. There's no question about it.
No, so hang on. So this is the question.
Monica mentioned about rent seekers.
Yeah.
I would in fact say that the small business today in India
Yeah.
is surrounded by rent seekers, leeches, and termites. I'm using very strong language here, but this is the only way to put it. A small business is consumed by this rent seekers, leeches, and termites who are just eroding away all productivity.
Okay, so we've got actually a problem. We've got a regulatory cholesterol that is making it difficult to absorb investment, and we also have a problem because the global economy led by America could go into recession, Monica Hallan. So how will this not affect the GDP of the country? I'm not understanding, because production depends on renewed investment. You also need to have consumption. Consumption might sort of start slowing because people are going to see, if these tariffs and we don't come to some sort of an agreement with the United States, etc., some amount of inflationary pressure. I'm very confused as a layman.
Look, frankly, you cannot have this protracted trade war for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I think everybody would understand that this is, they were both put guns on the table, both China and America. At some point, something will happen. At some point, this comes to an end, one way or the other. So whatever turmoil there is, it will have an impact, but I don't think it's going to have a very long-lasting impact. So you might see a little bit of a slowdown in GDP, but will we go into a recession? Absolutely not. We are not going to be doing that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the risk mitigation in India is fairly okay. And we just need this period to get over where two major powers are fighting for supremacy.
Ajay Sai, how are you looking at things? You're the DG and CEO of the Federation of Indian Export Organizations. How are you looking at things as of now?
No, in fact, the situation is definitely grim. We are definitely in an era of huge uncertainty, and it's bound to take hit for exports to US, not only of India, but the rest of the countries also. As of now, companies are just looking at which country can be the most effective supplier in terms of the tariff, and accordingly they will...
No, Mr. Sai, a few days back you were saying quite the opposite. You were saying that we'll get away unscathed because others have been punished a lot more. So
I'm saying that absolutely, when you're looking into the relative context, we are much better placed than many of our competitors in number of sectors.
Okay.
We tend to gain. The issue is whether the demand will take a hit or not. That's the bigger question, because if the demand takes a hit and the size of the cake shrinks, probably that may impact us. But at the same time, I definitely agree that we are much better placed than many of the competitors. We have the early mover advantage also. The countries are talking about now approaching America for an agreement. We are already moving towards an agreement, and that advantage will lie with us. We are just waiting for BTA to conclude, and once the BTA concludes, whatever little tariff disadvantage we have with many other partner countries, we will have at least the level playing field, and with the country where we are enjoying the tariff advantage, that will further deepen. So in any case, India is much better placed. What I'm talking about right now is that immediate future, we will may see a little slowing down of exports, and that is not only for India's export to the US, probably from the rest of the world. Export to US will slow down. But after 3 months down the line, I'm looking into a very good picture of exports. Though global trade may take a hit, but probably with the diversion, we will be able to compensate for that.
Okay, so you're thinking we're going to go into different markets. We might diversify out of the United States. Okay, interesting. Now, hang on. Let me bring in the common man's perspective. Not quite the R.K. Lakshman common man, but still. Dr. Ranganathan, look, many people would say today that perhaps the perspicacity of this government has allowed us to be in a situation where perhaps we aren't taking the brunt of it. Had we been like others, sitting on our egos, perhaps we might have been hit by more severe taxes. And India sort of went there, conciliatory, made announcements during the budget and subsequently to rationalize, to bring down its own taxes. Therefore, we've sort of got away. So do you think leadership matters? Do you think the leadership that has been provided so far has actually made a difference to help us perhaps breathe slightly easier?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, all of who are absolute experts. So I qualify whatever I'm going to say as words coming out of a layman. So please read the red herring prospectus carefully before investing your mind into what I'm going to say. But you know, a couple of things that Monica gave an excellent introduction about, but slight disagreement, you know, when she said, if you weak of heart, don't invest in stock markets right now because, you know, invest somewhere else. Well, ultimately, I think if the stock market crashes, then your money is not safe anywhere, because as we know from the Great Depression, I mean, you had bank runs, and of course, if the stock market crashes, then the banks also lower their interest rates, so FDs also. So basically, everyone's going to be hurt if the stocks crash sooner or later, sometimes sooner more than later. Secondly, I really applaud couple of panelists out here, Rajiv and Monica, telling the reality, because this same government couple of days ago was berating in very derisory way our job creators, wonderful entrepreneurs, youngsters who are making these startups. And you know, the fact of the matter is, if we have 75% of our labor force as unskilled, it is because of this government. So I don't know where this hubris and, you know, taunting is coming from. If we have 44% of our labor force involved in agriculture, that is contributing only 14% of the GDP, it's because of the government. If we have 56% of our graduates being unemployable, it is because of the government. So set your own house right before you criticize job creators who are delivery boys or whatever it may be. So that's point number two. Now let me come to this, and I speak as a layman. I want to go to the layer that is a little bit beyond the immediate, because I want to talk about something that I as a layman am thinking for the last couple of days. And I'm thinking this one question: why was there no market bloodbath when Canada slapped 298% and the EU 50% tariff on US products? If nations trading with America have deployed high tariffs to protect their jobs and business interests, then why is America not within its rights to deploy reciprocal tariffs? Canada and the EU can protect their jobs and businesses, but not America. Isn't that hypocritical? Look, there are 2 points here very briefly that I'd like to speak on briefly. Rahul, I remain an advocate of free trade and globalization, because that is the only way of eradicating poverty and making humanity more prosperous and equal. And so I'm fundamentally against tariffs and quotas because they encourage protectionism and license raj. This time round, the fact is Trump is even more virulently America first, more virulently anti-globalization, more virulently anti-Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. He is choosing tariffs over talent, and therefore, although in the short run, This might help America because through protectionism and high tariffs and quotas, Trump will create more jobs for Americans, more domestic growth and setting up of factories, protectionism, lower imports. In the long run, it doesn't help because high tariffs and protectionism will result in what they've always resulted in, a socialist trap that ultimately destroys a country's economy through less choice for consumers, outdated technology, increasing friction with other countries, and higher prices because of lack of competition and rule of monopoly. Remember ambassadors' cars and Campa Cola? In short, protectionism is against Darwinian evolution, whose overarching fundamentalist spirit of competition enabling survival of the fittest. But here I come to the second point. In taking to the spirit of competition in free trade, one cannot also allow unfair trade practices and dumping of goods. Those opposing Trump now were fine with Canada and the EU slapping 50 to 300% tariff on American goods. And as far as the problem of unfair trade practice is concerned, I think Modi did a great job to pull out of RCEP, which was effectively a free trade agreement with China, a known currency manipulator that props up its companies underhand indulging in unfair trade practices. Therefore, in the long run, tariffs are harmful and counterproductive, but they are an effective measure to check unfair trade practices. Besides, the extent of tariffs is decided by WTO, erstwhile the GATT, and nations come to mutually agreed upon rates. The ultimate goal, Rahul, is a level and free playing field that encourages competition, respects and rewards intellectual property, and gives consumers a choice at a reasonable cost. High tariffs don't do any of these three things. Finally, very important, all things being equal, imposing tariffs by a developing country on identical goods being imported from a developed country is superfluous, Rahul, because that product of the same quality and standard is being made in the developed world by someone earning 10 times the wages. And so when the product is sold in the developing world, its cost would naturally be higher and consumers would naturally choose a domestic product. For example, a simple pencil of identical quality made in America will sell at a much higher price than its Indian equivalent in India because the American who made it is given much higher wages. Problem comes when Americans decide they want cheaper pencils and start choosing pencils made in developing country, or their American pencil manufacturer begins getting its pencils made in a developing country to avoid paying higher wages. Ultimately, it's about graduating to higher quality, more tech, more IP demanding jobs. Just 30 seconds. Free markets and free trade is the best arbiter, Rahul. Did you know, for example, that Japan does not impose any tariffs on American cars? Because Japanese don't want to buy American cars as they are not as good as non-American cars. In fact, it is America that imposes tariffs on Japanese car makers, and yet Japanese car makers have roughly the same market share as American car makers in America. Look, let us not reinvent the wheel here. Protectionism is bad, period. Darwin said so, and Darwin is always right.
Well, look, I mean, you know, it's great to sort of have this lengthy, passionate sort of, expansive sort of layman opinion. But I think, look, fundamentally we have a bit of a problem here. And I want us to weigh in on this. Rajiv Mantri, let me come to you. Look, we're all assuming that, you know, Trump is coming from this sort of free trade, you know, let me fix China, this, that, the other place where he wants to try and make things all nice and smooth for his own country and make America great again, you know, and hope towards move the needle towards some sort of equity. But the point is, are Americans ready to bite the bullet? Because there is already stress. Can he continue down this road? Look, he came with a mandate. That mandate allowed him to implement some of his manifesto promises, but it ain't going too well for him.
No question. These are all very difficult, short-term, impacting choices which the US government is making. And it is anybody's guess what will be the fallout. Like I said, I'm simply not smart enough to know or even hazard a guess on how these things will all fall out. What I can say is that, China, we should always view it as a state which is controlled by a party. It is not really a conventional nation state. It is essentially a party-controlled state. And we have to deal with it differently. So the way India would make friendly bilateral or other bilateral trade agreements with friendly nations, I don't know if we can do the same with China. What we have done with, for example, Australia and UAE already, what we are proposing to do with UK, the EU, perhaps even the US, that would go in a different bucket. I would put that in a very separate category from how the China challenge has to be handled. Because the Chinese, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party has its own agendas, its own motivations. They are driven by completely different set of domestic factors relative to democracies like ours.
Okay.
So we should not deal with them in the same way that we would, let's say, deal with a US or UK or EU, or for that matter, Japan.
Okay, so hang on. There's some breaking news coming in, and Monica Hallan, I want you to weigh in on this. There's some breaking news coming in. Instructions to central PSUs from the Finance Ministry. Government of India is doing its best, and I'm quoting the Finance Ministry, doing its best to cushion its impact on minority stakeholders. It is our Prime Minister's vision that the wealth of public sector enterprises should be shared with the citizens. And our PSUs are leading by example in pursuit of that vision. Government has asked public sector companies to act as a role model in stock market and distribute at least 30% of their profit after tax or 4% of their net worth, whichever is higher, to their shareholders. Pallavi is joining us with this breaking news. Pallavi, where is this coming from?
See, this is actually released by the Department of Public Assets and Monitoring, which falls under the Finance Ministry, Rahul.
Yeah.
But I think there are two important points which comes out very clear in this. One is that the Prime Minister's instructions earlier, but clearly the Prime Minister's office and the PM himself is closely monitoring the entire stock market situation, because we're also anticipating some more of alarming trends coming in tomorrow. That's one point. Second, is this a hint to other stakeholders and investors as well? But for now, it's an instruction which has only been given to a central PSUs that you have to pass off, which is 4%, whichever is higher, to your shareholders. So that's very clear-cut messaging going across from the government and from the Prime Minister's office that we are concerned about the situation, and we are also here looking after the interest of the shareholders.
Okay, thanks very much. Pallavi Ghosh there reporting this big story. This big development is definitely going to make the headlines. Monica Hallan, what do you make of this?
Governments meddling in stock markets always ends badly. So the impact short term may be good for some very, very small shareholders. PSUs are not held widely. So as long as the government restricts its action to its own companies and doesn't do it to the private sector, like in the budget, they wanted the private sector to do apprenticeship. They were asking them to give these apprentice jobs to young people. So, as long as you're messing with your own companies, it's okay. But the fear is that they force the private sector to do the same. So, government intervention in business like this is absolutely not the direction that we want to go. We want them to stop meddling rather than more meddling.
Okay, Rajiv Mantri, quick remark from you on this.
No, I mean, I could not agree more with Monica. This is just theatre of the absurd, if you ask me. I have nothing else to say.
Theatre of the absurd. Okay, Dr. Ranganath and Mr. Ullah right after that. Yes.
Now, the absurdity begins and ends with the fact that we have a Prime Minister who said a government has no business to be in businesses. Yeah. And we have 1,830 public sector units right now, 400 of which are non-functional. Having said that, this decision, I'm personally, as a layman, I'm not against it, because a company that is being run by the government is putting more money, the profits that would otherwise go to the government for it to spend. Now that profit or that share is going to the shareholders, who are us, common people. And they can now spur the growth in the economy through investing in stock market. So the government is not asking the private sector to divest its profits and give it to shareholders. It's asking its own company to do it. I don't see anything wrong in that.
Amirullah Khan, quick one on this before I move on.
Rahul, I can't make head or tail of it. Is it because of the tariffs that this is happening? Is it to make the stock market?
Yeah, exactly. What is the objective? What does it achieve?
I think it's just to bring back some buoyancy. That's really improved sentiment.
And basically, more money for the stock.
Very few retail investors actually look. In terms of impact, it's not going to move the needle.
Yeah.
These are stocks held by institutions. Domestic institutions, large institutions, very few retail investors. So in terms of impact, it's not going to move the needle.
Well, viewers, look, there are all sorts of interventions that are probably going to happen. Maybe there'll also be an intervention to try to prop up the rupee. I don't know. But the fundamental thing is right now, these are tricky times. And for you who is watching, the retail investor, the advice is be cautious, don't do anything rash, wait it out, sweat it out if necessary, but things will perhaps change, and hopefully for the better. Don't be rash. Don't play the market in a manner that you are looking at futures and trading, etc., etc. Just don't do that. Stay put, stay out, stay invested. Don't get too tricky with your money. Just hold on. We'll move on, viewers. We'll move on because we have to look at a very important story now. And this story, viewers, is one that actually has the potential at a very tricky time to spark social unrest. We already have economic problems or uncertainty. The last thing we need is social uncertainty, because that's really a recipe for everything turning into one big, massive mess. But there are pockets in this country where religion rules, not the Indian constitution, and even the writ of parliament is flagrantly undermined. In Manipur, BJP Minority Morcha president, no less, Asghar Ali Makamuyum's house was burned to a cinder. You can see those pictures to the right. His house was set on fire. Why? Because of the Muslim, mind you viewers, as a Muslim, he had dared to put constitutionality first. Asghar Ali backed a reformative amendment that has brought the Waqf Act of 1995 in line with the spirit of the Indian Constitution, as you know, through those amendments that were passed just last week. But some from his own community felt that he had committed a heresy. The punishment was immediate. Chilled to the bone, Asghar Ali has now done a U-turn. Before the attack, he said, do not play politics on Waqf Amendment Bill. We welcome the bill. We support the Waqf Amendment Bill. After the attack, viewers, in connection with the Waqf Bill, he says, that was recently passed in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. I also had shared some posts on social media supporting the bill. I apologize to the entire Muslim community and Meiti Pangals. I now urge the government to repeal the bill, which has been converted into an act at the earliest, unquote. Not one, viewers, not one so-called liberal, progressive, pluralist has come out and condemned this act of vigilantism in the name of religion. Unlike in the past, when this ecosystem immediately jumped to evoke the term, quote, Hindu Rashtra, unquote. Not one so-called secularist has said, quote, stop turning India into an Islamist state, unquote, where the rights of citizens are seconded to the will of God. This is a scandal. This silence is a scandal, viewers, as this is the same state where a video of an outrage committed upon a woman from the members of another community drew squeals, howls of derision from so-called constitutionalists. Not just in Manipur, over in Kashmir. Legislators, and you can see that in the middle of your screens, opposing the newly enacted Waqf bill began chanting Allahu Akbar, or God is the greatest, in the house to shout down BJP MLAs who were raising Vande Mataram or Hail Mother India slogans. Listen to this. That God is thought to be above the nation and its constitution has been so normalized in what the opposition there said was a, quote, Muslim majority state, unquote, raises some questions. Will all Muslims who have supported the Waqf Act now be declared apostates and targeted as if India is a Shariat governed nation? Why has no one from the so-called secular bloc come out and taken a stand against the privileging of religion over the constitution? Is the reliance on intimidation and intolerance the new toolkit to terrorize those, including Muslims, who support the Waqf Amendment Act? Won't the use of vigilantism have a chilling impact on the freedom of choice? Because these are some fundamental questions today that need to be asked, because the writ of the parliament is being undermined. Now, I am not saying that parliament is supreme always, or rather infallible. Yes, it is fallible. Go to the courts by all means. challenge the matter in courts. How can you today, belonging to the Congress party, Kamru Chaudhary, sit in absolute silence, statue-like silence, when an individual from your own community who supported the BJP and this bill is being given death threats and his house has been razed to the ground? Look at this. How can you be silent? Where is your leader who talks about Muhammad ki Rajniti and all of this? You raised such a ruckus over one event in a very, very egregious event in Manipur. Let me tell you, viewers, 2 years ago. Silence. Absolute silence. Why?
Rahul, I request you to give me just 2 minutes of your time so that I can finish off my point before you come in. In this particular case, let's be very clear. The anger in the Muslim community is not just about the bill. It's about a betrayal. When a Muslim leader backs a law that community sees as a direct attack on its institutions, its heritage, and its autonomy, what do you expect? Applause? I don't think so.
What do you expect?
No, wait.
Unbelievable.
When someone
Rahul.
from within starts justifying the bulldozers, the scholarship cuts, the Waqf land grabs, they are not being pragmatic, but they are being complicit. That's why terms like Mir Jafar or Jayed Chand are used, not lightly, but because history remembers betrayal from within more sharply than oppression from outside.
Shocking. I can't believe I'm hearing
You must
this.
understand the anger within the Muslim community. This is not about a leader in Manipur. It's about the years of erasure that we are facing and of being told your pain doesn't matter. And then watching your own people clap for it. That's why the frustration boils over.
So why, sir? They have
Because when
hang on.
trust is
If they are,
broken from
if they are
within, it
siding
hurts
with
deeper.
constitutionalism in this country, what do you mean, my own people? What do you mean? Are you living in some separate, reality, parallel universe or something? What do you mean, your own people? Indians. They might be
Rahul,
Muslims, but they're Indians. They're Indians
Rahul,
first. So are you
Rahul,
going to tell
you
me that
just
anyone
now-
who supports, anyone who supports the BJP from your community, sir, no. I'm saying anyone who supports the BJP becomes an enemy for you. Is that your, sir, is that your commitment to constitutionalism and democracy and pluralism and freedom of choice?
Rahul, you just now showed a comparison with the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly where the National Conference leaders were shouting Allahu Akbar. I believe Allahu Akbar is not a war cry, nor shouting Jai Shri Ram in the Rajya Sabha.
No, you're not understanding something. I'm not getting
you
there.
are
Just
not
1 minute,
understanding because you want
Mr.
to
Kamru
quote your
Chaudhary. No,
narrative.
there's nothing. Hang on. I don't ever can even begin to bring myself, Dr. Ranganathan, to justify vigilantism. Can you believe it? Today you're saying the provocation matters. The provocation matters, and you say that in a Muslim state, majority state like Kashmir, we should be passing resolution after resolution. Now, India viewers
one
second, Dr. Ranganathan. India is a Hindu majority state. By that yardstick, there should be no laws protecting any minorities.
Shouting Jai Shri Ram. Does that boil you?
Rahul,
One second.
Does that boil you?
No, 1
If they
second.
were
I'll tell
shouting
you.
Allahu
One
Akbar,
second.
it boils you.
No, I'll tell you. I'm not going to get into this. I'll ask Dr. Ranganathan to respond to you on both counts. One, that yes, a provocation, if it is too much, we have the right to respond, even though the provocation is not coming through the street here, Dr. Ranganathan. They are taking umbrage at A, the Supreme Court, B, the Parliament. Tomorrow it will be something else. I don't know where this line can be drawn.
Before I say something, first of all, I'm just in a daze right now. It's like a truck has run over me by the comments made by the previous panelists. So whatever I'm going to say, my only request is that you please fade out the previous panelists, because surely is going to interrupt me. Rahul, I have never been so shocked by the comments that have been made so brazenly on national television. Far from condemning the barbarous act of a politician's house being set ablaze by a Muslim mob just because that politician agreed with what the parliament ultimately passed. Far from condemning it, this person is talking about the reasons and justification why his house, maybe the family was inside, was set ablaze. And the justification is, it is because of betrayal. Betrayal of the Muslim community by a fellow Muslim. And this is first part of my astonishment. The second part of my astonishment is my admiration for Dr. Ambedkar now has leapt exponentially. How could that man be so correct about people like Kamru 100 years before? How could he read such people with such clarity, crystal clear thought that he said Islam is a closed corporation and those who are inside that corporation, they are has nothing but contempt and enmity. How could Dr. Ambedkar read people like Kamru so well? Even before people like Kamru were born. This is what astonishes me. And this is the truth of this country, Rahul, that you can do whatever you want against Hindus. You can have 8 constitutional and legal discriminations against Hindus. You can promulgate an act that forces Hindus land to be given free of cost at will to Muslims. But the moment you try and redress the balance, not by giving the Hindus an equivalent draconian act, but by amending the draconian portions of that act, you suddenly find Muslims justifying burning of houses of Muslims, i.e. Indians first, who actually sided with that act. And what has happened? This is what street veto gives to you, Rahul. Street veto is mob lynching by one name or the other.
Yep.
And tonight, people like Kamru have mob lynched. There is no other word for it. I am ashamed to be sharing the same panel as him. I don't know whether he likes to call himself Indian or not.
No, and I'll tell you, Kamru Chaudhary is no fringe element, viewers. He's a member of the Congress party. He's contested elections on a Congress ticket. So he's not somebody who we have just, many people are accused of bringing any Joe Blow and plonking them on television and saying that, okay, let's get a debate with the most extremist views. No, we're not even doing that, viewers. This is a bona fide Congress leader.
And this is why Sir Syed Ahmed Khan said, and I quote him, Muslims and Hindus are two antagonistic races.
Yeah,
he has proved
that's what he said. That's what he said. Exactly. And I just don't want to go there.
Those people who swear by Swami Vivekananda don't know what Swami Vivekananda said about the Hindu soul and the Muslim body.
Yeah, but don't tonight make it. No, that's exactly why someone like you should say, I stand with this gentleman whose home was burnt down. Rather than say, no,
betrayal.
The provocation, there's a betrayal,
Rahul,
this, that. One second. Let me just bring it. No, 1 minute. Let me bring in now. Let me bring in Karan Verma. Karan Verma, how do you respond to this?
This person who
I'm sorry. I have to lower your fader. Sir, this is not right. You cannot hog a debate after making a very long point uninterrupted. I never stopped you from making a 2.5, 3 minute long point where you justified vigilantism. This is the road to, I'm sorry to say, viewers, an Islamist state, where one community thinks that it has laissez-faire to respond to provocation, even if it is coming, by all due process. Karan Verma, what are we doing here?
So, Rahul, unlike you and Dr. Ranganathan, I'm actually not surprised because I've seen this before. I remember when there was a mob that took to the streets saying Gustakhe Rasool ki ek hi saza, sar tan se juda. It was justified on these very panels by people. They rationalized that. So today if they are rationalizing it, I'm not surprised.
In fact, the Supreme Court, if you remember, Mr. Karan Verma said that, Nupur Sharma, her utterances have led to this.
They are the ones.
Imagine, she has single-handedly set the country on fire. Those were the words, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And, for Kamru Zaman, you have to commend his clarity of thought. He is so clear in his mind. Unlike you, Rahul, he is absolutely clear. Constitutionalism be damned. For him, this is an act of betrayal. For him, Mr. Asghar Ali is a betrayer. And what do they do with betrayers and apostates? Well, we know what they do. Yeah. So he is very clear in his mind. And for Dr. Ranganathan, he said, how could Dr. Ambedkar know that Kamrus existed? Well, Kamrus have existed for thousands of years, maybe 1,400 years. So we should not be surprised. It's just that we should wake up to this reality for those who still in slumber. That is how clear they have it in their mind. They want to decimate, obliterate anyone who stands in their larger scheme of Ummah, in their larger scheme of what they believe is an Islamic state. For them, when they chant Allahu Akbar, in the premises, for them it is because Allah is greater than the constitution, greater than everything else.
But this is where I want to bring in Mr. Ayaz. Ayaz Sahab, the phrase that was used by party after party is this, that we are in a Muslim majority state. And if in a Muslim majority state we don't take a position against the Waqf Act, where will we do so? Now, I want to ask you a question, Ayaz Sahab. Uttar Pradesh is a Hindu majority state. Actually, all of India is Hindu majority. What if every state assembly decided that they were going to take a position against the Places of Worship Act because, you see, it would further Hindu interests? How would you respond to that?
I see, it's not a matter of, it should not be a matter of majoritarian or the minority. It should not be there. It should not be the case. However, the case should be.
No. So then condemn these slogans in your house.
No, that's what I say. Since we are in a democratic system, we should have the freedom to speak and openly and
okay. So do you condemn the attack? Do you condemn the attack on the BJP member in Manipur?
Attack is condemnable. Yes,
okay.
Attacks are condemnable.
Okay,
if someone has a problem, you see, there is the problem. We do agree there is a problem.
So the second question. Ayaz Sahab, second question. Please listen to me. I thank you for condemning this. Thank you.
It is. There's no secondly, of violence.
Secondly, let me ask you. What is this business of saying that we are in a Muslim majority state? Can you explain this to me?
Well, one can say so, but the point is it should not matter. Everybody has a right to live respectably, whether he is in minority state or a majority state. That should not be the case. Say, for example, in Jammu, Muslims are in minority. Majority. Does that mean anyone living in minority will have no rights?
Can you condemn the NC MLAs? Can you condemn the PDP MLAs for invoking this in the House?
No, there it must not be. It's not a matter of, we have been discussing since morning, it's a matter of NCR PDP. I think we should condemn anyone because we are not expecting lawmakers in the parliament or in the legislative assembly to get physical abuse each other. We are expecting them to
Kamru Chaudhary, now you realize this, because by your yardstick then, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And there is a problem. So Kamru Chaudhary, can you at least tell Mr. Ayaz why you now disagree with him? Or do you think he's an apostate, he's a Mir Jafar, hang him too?
Betrayal.
Can't hear you, sir. I think you're on mute. Yeah. Go ahead.
Am I on mute?
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Rahul, as a Muslim of this country, as an Indian citizen with equal partner as anybody in this panel, I can categorically say that I, along with my community, this is not about victim card as Anand Ranganathan would say. We are already grappling with a systematic marginalization, be it in education, be it in employment, be it
Have you been marginalized from going to the court? Have you been marginalized from protesting peacefully? Have you been marginalized from, have you been marginalized, hang on. Have you been marginalized from mainstream media? No.
Rahul, can I finish? Please?
No, I'm sorry. This victim card business has to end because in the guise of viewers, in the guise of playing this identity card, they think that we should make an allowance for all sorts of extra constitutional actions. JSR state,
are they regulated in India?
Okay, 1 second. I'll have to wrap. Please lower the fader. JSR slogan should be allowed because it's free speech. Okay, good. I'm glad. But then what about STJ slogans, viewers, which is hate speech? They say that should be allowed. Can you believe it? Sartan se juda should be allowed because Jai Shri Ram is allowed. There is no sense of parity. I'll leave it at this.
Presented by
China 67%. European Union, 39%. Vietnam, 90%. India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. They charge us 52%.
Well, at the moment, the market is reacting to the fact that there was no ameliorative or softer statement from the US or from President Trump over the weekend. On Thursday and Friday, the US markets fell over 10%. The Nasdaq is in bear territory, which means 20% off its highs. When an index falls over 20%, you call it bear territory. The expectation was that after seeing such a fall, which has happened only 3 times before in recent history, during COVID and during the 2008 Lehman crisis, if he doesn't respond to that, then is he likely to not pull back at all? That is the sentiment to which the Asian markets are reacting now. In addition, of course, there is the Chinese retaliation as well. So the markets here are reacting to the fact that there is no ameliorative statement. We will still have to wait and see. An ameliorative statement from the US president to any of the countries can still pull back the market somewhat. What the market is worried if there is a retaliatory statement even from the EU, then it's a global, trade war. China has already called the war. So that's what the market is confused about. It was expected that big crash was the worst, but that didn't happen. It looks like there will be even worse in terms of Trump holding back, ready to take the immediate pain. His statement was that, some medicine is needed. That's the market's worry, really. It is going to get worse before it gets better. That's the first worry. The second worry is, even when it gets better, the world is going to grow much more slowly than what was expected before the Trump presidency. We are reacting to that. So even when we correct, we are not going to correct back to the previous levels because there is a global slowdown. Actually, only the developed countries and China who have retaliated. They are in a slightly stronger position than India is, than developing countries are. And so those are the two blocks that have retaliated. The rest of them are willing to come to any concessions. To be fair, even Canada is willing to come to concessions. But the Indian position relative to this issue is very strong. Our trade deficit, the important point is Trump is not going by your tariff levels. You can have 100, 200% tariffs for all he cares, but don't have a trade deficit with my country, which is buy more from us and sell less to us. That's all he wants, which is India is in a position to do, because our trade deficit with him is only $40 billion or thereabouts, and one can easily buy more oil even if it's a little more expensive. And once the trade deficit comes down to about $10 billion, the tariffs on our products will come down. We will still have a 10% tariff, which he has announced on all countries, but we are in a much better position to negotiate, saying we will buy some more, and thereby, if you give him a commitment that we will bring down the trade deficit to $10 billion or zero by the end of this year, tariffs can come down. We are in a better position. But you must remember that that is not the only reason why the markets are falling. That will make things better for us. Markets are falling because we are not only selling to the US, we are selling to the world. And if the world is in a tighter place, in a worse place, then Indian markets will reflect that. Our exports to other countries will also suffer. So we have to keep that in mind. We are in a good position with respect to the US. We will be the economy which will fall less than other economies, but our growth is going to be less than we thought earlier this year.
China, 67%. European Union, 39%. Vietnam, 90%. India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. They charge us 52%.
Well, at the moment, the market is reacting to the fact that there was no ameliorative or softer statement from the US or from President Trump over the weekend. On Thursday and Friday, the US markets fell over 10%. The Nasdaq is in bear territory, which means 20% off its highs. When an index falls over 20%, you call it bear territory. The expectation was that after seeing such a fall, which has happened only 3 times before in recent history, during COVID and during the 2008 Lehman crisis, if he doesn't respond to that, then is he likely to not pull back at all? That is the sentiment to which the Asian markets are reacting now. In addition, of course, there is the Chinese retaliation as well. So the markets here are reacting to the fact that there is no ameliorative statement. We will still have to wait and see. An ameliorative statement from the US president to any of the countries can still pull back the market somewhat. What the market is worried if there is a retaliatory statement even from the EU.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's a sea of red across the globe. Stock markets have crashed. In the US, they've seen a swing of some $7 trillion. European stocks are tanking. Asia has been the worst hit. Economists are predicting a recession. And Trump is showing no signs of slowing down. So what is the end game of this trade war? What is India's strategy? Is it talks or tit for tat? Did Trump crash the markets on purpose? Speculation is rife after he says they needed a bitter pill. Is his own party now gunning for him? The Republicans say the president is destroying the economy. World leaders are warning Washington, saying they are quote-unquote ready to fight. And Americans are protesting on the streets. We will bring you the fallout of this tariff war. Also, a special report on India's nuclear submarine base. Is China building a military base in Bangladesh with the help of Pakistan? Delhi says it is studying the reports. Why has Saudi Arabia suspended short-term visas for Indians? Why is Japan running out of rice? All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to meet Donald Trump shortly. He will be the first foreign leader to meet Trump since the US president announced tariffs causing turmoil across global markets. The Israeli Prime Minister is likely to ask for a reprieve from the tariffs. Countering Iran and the war in Gaza are also on Netanyahu's agenda. French President Emmanuel Macron meets his Egyptian counterpart in Cairo. Macron says Hamas should have no role in governing Gaza, but strongly opposes displacing Palestinians. Egypt, along with Qatar and the US, has been mediating between Israel and Hamas. Macron also urged Russia to stop stalling and accept Trump's Ukraine ceasefire deal. The Philippines and the US launched joint drills. This follows frequent confrontations between Beijing and Manila over the disputed South China Sea. Since the election of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in 2022, military ties between the Philippines and the US have deepened as Manila has pushed back on Beijing's sweeping claims in the South China Sea. Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso withdraw their ambassadors from Algeria. All three junta-ruled states have accused Algerian forces of shooting down a Malian drone. Last week, Algiers said it had shot down an armed reconnaissance drone in its airspace. Mali calls it a hostile and premeditated act by Algeria. And Tajikistan introduces a 10-year prison sentence for those illegally using electricity. The Central Asian country has battled a decades-long energy crisis which has been caused by water shortages. Electricity consumption in Tajikistan is limited for about 6 months every year.